Welcome to Substance Free 02043, brought to you by Hingham Cares. I'm Kristen Arute, and I am President and Program Director of Hingham Cares. We're a federally funded nonprofit, and our mission is to reduce substance use among youth in our community. My guest today is Kevin Rosario, who has been working in the field of addiction and recovery for a number of years. Welcome, Kevin. Great to have you here. Before we start talking about your own personal recovery journey, let's get to know you a little bit better. Could you tell us where you grew up, share a little bit about your background, your family dynamic, that sort of thing?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in New Bedford, Massachusetts, two-parent household. Dad's a Portuguese immigrant. He came to America when he was like 17 with his twin sisters, my aunts. And, I feel like I never really needed anything, right? They took care of me. My mom kind of held it down. She had like a city job. She was payroll clerk for the New Bedford Fire Department. And my father was like, he did painting, he did offshore fishing, he did jobs that weren't always consistent. And so that created some static in the household. My father's a great guy. I'm super close to him now. I'm not trying to throw shade on him, of course, but it was a thing that even as a young person, I was aware, like there was this tension in the household. Another dynamic that I think about when I think of like adverse childhood experiences and like what formed me, my father was like, he was nice. He was a yes man. He was the guy that did the cooking at the campground. And he was like, he was hands-on. Whereas my mother's brother, my uncle, he was like the rah-rah, the tough guy, the tell other people what to do guy. I remember just early on being more attracted to like the machismo of my uncle than of my father, because my uncle was like, he demanded respect. And I feel like it's when I first kind of learned about ego and maybe even developed my own ego, because I want to be the tough guy. I want to be the machismo. I'm not cooking for you. I'm not cleaning for you. I'm the man.
So he was your role model.
He was. He really was, to the extent that like even on Father's Day, I would get my uncle a Father's Day card as well as my father, because I looked up to him so much. And how that affected me in a sense is that when I got a little bit older, I was not attracted to the hardworking guy, or even my mom who had a city job, who I don't really feel like she loved all the time. It was just, it was steady benefits. She managed well. She's like super smart, Dean's List from high school. Like she's that lady. And I was more attracted to the rah-rah. My uncle had the big trucks with the big rims before it was popular. He owned a limo business. He brought us camping. He paid for everything. He had like this larger than life, I have money energy. And so when I got into my early teens and I started seeing people in the street and selling drugs and doing all that stuff, I was like, oh yeah, I want to be the tough guy, the violent guy, the aggressive, the guy with the money. I thought people that worked 40 hours a week were fools. As like a 12-year-old, I felt like that, I thought college was ridiculous. I looked at my parents who seemed like they were struggling and didn't always seem happy. And then I looked at my uncle, like the big shot, this big aura, big energy guy. And I'm like, yeah, I want to be like that.
Right,
right.
Did you have siblings?
I do. I have a brother that's 3 years younger than me. Good kid, never been arrested. Like there's only two of us. He's the solid half. And like to the extent that he's the guy that has like 5 godchildren, right? So if you're having a kid, you try to think of the most stable person and you pick that person to be the godfather. He's that guy for multiple people,
Wow.
He's just always been like the solid. If you need to move and you want someone that's going to show up, he's going to show up. He's that guy. Shout out to Nick Rosario, like he really is like a good kid, always been a good kid. Also experienced a lot of the negative effects of where my path ended up going, because he was there for my mother while I was running around getting in trouble and stuff like that, and he held it down. So again, also grateful to have a great relationship with him. Yesterday it was 46 degrees. We went golfing. We played 9 holes. The ground was half soggy, half frozen. It was a disaster, but it was like nice to get out with him, and because we can have that relationship today, So
right, that's incredible. So it's interesting that you latched on to somebody other than a parent figure to be your role model.
Yeah.
How old were you when you started using substances, and was your uncle influential in that as well?
That's a good point. And just to go back to why my uncle was more appealing than my father, I was always a smaller kid. I was a late bloomer. I hit puberty late. I was short. I was like the little runt. And so there was already at a young age built-in insecurity, self-esteem issues. So like, if I'm going to offset that, I need to be big and aggressive and scary. I can't be meek and compliant. I had to, so that personality seemed to fit as in probably unhealthy coping mechanism at that age. But to answer your actual question, yes. I mean, like, I'm 45 years old. I grew up in, the 80s and 90s. Everybody was drinking. Everybody was smoking. It was very open. Most of my family is Portuguese. The other half is like Portuguese and English. But at all events, always drinking, always having a good time. My uncle was a bass guitar player on top of it, right? So he's got that cool persona. But they're drunk. They're all drunk. They're smoking weed behind the scenes. I don't know until I'm older that they're smoking weed in the basement. But the drinking and the levity and like the partying and the music was all a big part of my childhood. And quite frankly, it looks like fun.
So that influenced you. That almost reduced any sort of barrier to you getting involved in those kinds of things because you saw it, you grew up with it.
Yeah.
It was part of your childhood. So what was your initial encounter, I guess, for lack of a better word, with alcohol and drugs?
Yeah, so I like to go back before that because obviously we focus on and we're aligned with this whole prevention initiative stuff, super important. But I also believe that drugs and alcohol are not really the problem. The real problem is there's anxiety, there's depression, there's trauma, there's something before. And then when you try a substance and it offers a little bit of relief, now you're hooked because you're self-medicating. So it's important to say, yes, I smoked weed for the first time in 7th grade. That's really young. I was only like 12 or 13 years old. But the truth is, in elementary school, I already had a rough going. Right. Like the parents are fighting, the money's inconsistent. I don't have a tremendous respect for my father at that point. I'm like looking up to my uncle. I was the little runt, and I grew up in New Bedford, which is a very diverse community. And my mom decided to send me to an elementary school that was not in my district because at the time, and this dates me to the viewers, it was the first elementary school with a computer program. I'm talking 32 megabit Oregon Trail computer program, but that was like a big deal, in like 1989 or something. So she sends me to this school, and the school is across the street from the projects. And so I'm a magnet student. I'm different. I have to take a special bus. I have to be allowed to go there. And then most of my friends live in the projects across the street, African-American, Spanish, and quite frankly, many of them had tougher stories. Some of them had beautiful, loving, caring people that just happened to live in the projects, but some of them were like, who's dad? Mom's an alcoholic, being raised by Nana. And so even in 5th grade, when I knew there was like this heaviness at home and I kind of felt a little off, I can't go to school and talk to my friends about it because I felt like, how am I to complain about my 2 parents who own a 2-family home that are fighting when these people live in the projects and dad's not even present?
Right.
So I had to eat that and stuff that. And then one time on recess, like some kid bullied me, threw a ball at me, picked on me. I was scared. I froze up. Some other kid saved me. And then in 6th grade, I fell in love. I had this little puppy love in 6th grade. I liked this girl and I wanted to get her a little gift for her birthday. And I brought a little gift in my pocket and all day, right? You're stuck in this class all day. So you got to time this right. If this goes poorly, I'm going to do it at the end of the day. That way I can get out. And I just remember 6th grade, however old you are, what am I, 10, 11? I'm consumed with fear. I'm already thinking about what if she rejects me, people are going to laugh, people are going to pick on me. And so I'm like frozen all day. And then like after lunch, probably like 1 o'clock, I finally got the courage. And I'm like, all right, I'm ready. And as I'm like going to approach her, some other boy walks right by me and goes, happy birthday, and kisses her right on the lips in front of me.
Oh my goodness.
And I was crushed, right? And all of when I speak in high schools, the kids laugh at me. I know it sounds so corny as a grown man to say that, but like I've done enough therapy and 12-step work and reflection and prayer and meditation, like to know what makes me. And that was a pivotal thing. I got bullied in 5th grade and I got my little heart broken in 6th grade. And so when I left that elementary school, that's why transitions are so important. Middle school to high school to college, like there's a big a risk factor. And what happened to me was I made a decision. Some therapists will call it an inner vow. I made an inner vow, a deep-rooted promise to myself that I will never be picked on and I will never be vulnerable and let a woman hurt me like that again. So now I go to 7th grade, guess what happens? Now I'm the class clown, now I'm making fun of other kids, I'm starting to hang around with the 8th graders to get that protection that I needed. Now I'm becoming more aggressive, right? So like I'm learning these coping skills because in reality, I'm a scared little boy full of insecurity and doubt and fear and low self-esteem. And so now I transformed into something else. And that's where the problem began. Oh, and then I smoked weed, right? The weed is secondary to the fact that I wasn't okay in the first place.
That's a really good point.
So then next thing you know, I'm hanging around with 8th graders. 8th graders got high school cousins. We'll walk into a New Bedford high school football game and someone lights a joint. and they pass it around, and I just take it. And I had never even heard about it. It wasn't planned. It was like not something I was looking for. Like literally the cool kids I was with passed the joint around, and I smoked it just because I wanted to be part of that crowd. And I actually remember not getting high. I remember I did not get high the first time I smoked weed, but what I felt was I'm in, and now I'm cool, and I got the acceptance of them. And you know, it's kind of what's crazy when I look at it, like we go to high schools and like, you know, I'll be speaking to the seniors and they look young. You go speak in middle schools and you're like, these are little babies. Well, in 7th grade, my older friends gave me pre-rolled joints. I'm 13. How are you going to get weed, right? Here's 5 joints, sell 4 and keep the 5th one. In 7th grade, I was already selling joints in junior high school.
How did you get from trying marijuana accidentally to selling joints to your peers in middle school?
Yeah, we don't play around, Kristen. We move quick, you know. Well, here's the thing, right? So I just smoked weed accidentally, and now I'm in with that crowd. So now I'm getting invited to people's houses on the weekend, and it's just a weekend thing. But then, like what we learned about addiction and alcoholism, and it sets off this mental obsession. Now I can't wait to go smoke that weed with these kids. Now it's something I want. Now it's something that I see value in. And so now it's like, oh, how do I get more of this?
Right.
And now the older kids are like, oh, well, no problem. You know, if you sell a few, I'll give you one. Okay,
Gotcha.
deal. You know?
So it becomes a physiological longing. So you were longing for acceptance, and the acceptance came, and you were using substances to achieve that acceptance, that level of acceptance.
Right.
But now all of a sudden you've got this longing, not just for acceptance, but for the actual substance itself.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yeah, because if you look at me, you don't have to be a psychologist to know I'm ADHD to the max. I'm 45 years old. Can you imagine me at 12? I ran at 2,000 RPMs. I had a half a cup of coffee at like 7 a.m. This is where I live. So you got insecurity, low self-esteem, adverse childhood experiences, a need for acceptance, and you smoke a joint, and I can breathe, and I can slow down, and I'm less consumed with what everybody thinks about me, and I'm just high, and nothing matters anymore, right? And so that's how it gets you, and that's how it gets many of us, is like, I was always manic. Like you can see the whole tone and speed of my voice changed right now, because I've learned skills in recovery, how to regulate and catch myself from being manic. I get excited and I get worked up, and then I catch it, and I'm like, oh, take a breath, dude, chill out, right? Skills I didn't have. And so when I started using substances that did that for me, now it became a weekend thing to a daily, like I need it now, you know? And then you talk about biology. Well, the biology is, you know, we build a tolerance. So at 13 years old, I'm a little baby, I'm smoking weed on the weekend, then I'm smoking weed a couple nights a week. And then as time progresses, like that little couple hits off a joint doesn't get me high like it used to get me high. And next thing you know, I'm an 8th grader. And now all my friends are at the high school and they're like, hey, we got mescaline now. The hell's mescaline, right? And it was this little pill, most relatable to like Molly of today. It was like not as intense as acid, but made you laugh more than like mushrooms. Like it was like this little pill that you took that you would just be laughing, you smoke weed. In 8th grade, I was taking mescaline. So now what we know about science and neuroscience and the prefrontal cortex and the developing brain and all that stuff, I was destined for detox in jail in 8th grade. Think about it. I didn't have a pubic hair in my body, and I'm smoking weed and taking acid and mescaline, right?
Right.
And by the end of 8th grade, next thing you know, like I'm selling mescaline. Because same thing. Oh, I love mescaline. And it was something you only did on the weekend. You had to be in a safe, controlled place. You can't go to school on mescaline. But very quickly, I wanted to do mescaline more frequently. And those same guys were like, hey, great news. We'll give you 10 of these at $4 a pop. You sell them for $5, right? You end up getting a couple free. And in 8th grade, I was selling weed and mescaline.
To pay for your habit.
Just so I could have a good time, to support my own habit, you know?
You've sort of touched on the fact that you've had some issues with the law, that you've also been in, rehab facilities, that you've done detox, things like that. So we're still in middle school right now. You haven't even gotten into high school. No. How, like you said, you're in 8th grade and you're using all this stuff.
Yeah.
There's no place to go but down. So how do you get to the point where, tell us the progression of your story.
So you should also add that behavioral problems are started in elementary school. And I tease my mother about this all the time because she's such a sweetheart. But like in elementary school, the teachers were like, this kid's a lot. So she brings me to the doctor. Doctor says, oh yeah, classic ADHD. We should put him on Ritalin. And God bless my mother. She goes, oh, no, I don't want to have my kid on drugs the rest of his life, right? So the joke is, I ended up on drugs most of my life because I needed something probably, you know what I'm saying? And so that started in elementary school. Now junior high, I'm getting in trouble. I'm getting suspended. So that happens first. Then I leave junior high school and I go to New Bedford Vogue. I end up in Vogue. And now I'm like a full-blown weed salesman. I get my little job at Friendly's to keep my mom off my back. And I'm the first one to go to driver's ed. I'm the first one with a car. Now I'm mobile. So now you're everybody's best friend. You can travel. You can go to the beach. You can deliver weed if that's what you got to do. And then at 16 years old, I'm like hanging out on the avenue in New Bedford, and I got arrested for disturbing the peace. And then what ends up happening is, like, when you choose this life, you end up being around more of those people in that life. And then there are people that are always further into the life than you are. And basically what happened was I got introduced to like shoplifting, not because I'm a drug addict that's going to be sick if I don't get it, but because I'm 16 and 17 years old and like I have limited income. And so what happened was like people were like selling stolen goods. They didn't have these in the day, but like you might have a guy that has iPads or a guy that has cell phones or a guy that has subwoofers, and they were basically stealing them and selling them. And so as a freshman, 16 years old, I started shoplifting and stealing things and then selling them in the community. Like I would pull up in my car on Acushnet Avenue, and in my trunk I'd have Gap Polo hoodies or whatever, and I'd have video games, and I'd have marijuana, and I would just I'd be the guy.
And people knew you as that person.
And so that ties back to my
salesman.
uncle. Oh, I was the guy.
Yeah.
So my uncle used to joke when we used to go camping. He'd say, oh, I got a guy. What do you mean you got a guy? Oh, I got a guy. He's got, gas grills. They fell off a truck. They're lukewarm. And it's like lukewarm, right? And as you get older, they're stolen. They're hot, right? And so he made that cool. And so when I got introduced.
So it was prestigious for you to become that guy.
Oh, you're the guy. You got everything. What do you need? You need weed, you need coke, you need guns, you need video games. I got a guy. If I'm not the guy, I got a guy, And now it really fills that insecurity because you feel this fake sense of purpose and need. Now people, what I didn't even realize until after I really got into recovery is like most of these people were just associates. And when I got sober and no longer wanted to provide or partake in any of those things, they all went away.
Yeah.
But when you got a pager and a cell phone and you're always the guy on demand, it's a good distraction to offset the insecurity of being that broken little kid. And one other thing to your point that you said about seeing parents drink and having fun. One, this is why I don't try scaring kids when I talk to young people, because I don't think it can scare them. Two, I try to help parents have educated conversations, because my parents, God bless them, my mother was like, Kevin, you can't drink. Why? Because I said so. You shouldn't be smoking weed. Why? Because it's illegal. And it was just like these answers that weren't satisfying. Like, well, hold on a second. You guys drink and you guys smoke weed and you guys look like you're having a real good time and you have good jobs and you're a good mom. And like, so the message wasn't consistent. You're saying, don't do this because I said so. Meanwhile, you're doing it. And my favorite person in the world does it to the extreme. So now I'm on this path. And once you smoke weed and realize, oh, this is pretty good. Once you drink a little bit and you realize, oh, this is pretty good. These people have been lying to me. Then it's like, well, what else are you lying to me about? So once you walk through the fear of experimenting with substance, that's why even the vaping is so dangerous. It's like, all right, oh, it's just vaping. It's just vaping. It's just vaping right now. And if you're not afraid to vape at 15, when that stops working, and it will stop working because your body will build a tolerance, what else are you willing to try? Right. And that was my experience. I tried this, and then my older friends, they're progressing faster than me. So they're introducing me to more and more things. And like, we can fast forward through all the chaos because I feel like it doesn't matter as much. But like, next thing you know, in high school, I'm experimenting with Valium and Klonopin. So I start selling Valium and Klonopin. Next thing you know, it's Percocets and Vicodin. So I start selling Percocets and Vicodin. My junior year, I became junior class president for fun. The school was pissed, right? Like, so I'm a known menace. Everybody knows I'm the party guy, but the president was a class, like a popularity contest. And some kid was running that I was like, no way, that dude's not going to be my president. I'll run. Next thing you know, I got a platform. I'm in the lunchroom. I'm promising Twinkies and big parties and like all this chaos, right? And I won. And they were so upset. And so I ended up failing shop by like 3 points that year. And 4 of the kids failed by that or more. And they were all given academic probation to come back the next year. But because I was a problem child, they were like, you can go now. They didn't even call me. They sent me a letter in the mail that said, please return to your descending high school, which means you're not allowed at Voc. Go to New Bedford High.
Wow.
And so, and again, all these things. I got arrested at 16 for shoplifting. I got arrested at 16 for disturbing the peace. I got arrested at 17 for something else. I got a DUI. I got 2 DUIs before I was even 21.
Wow.
Right? And so it keeps progressing, and I'm getting in trouble. But none of these are stop signs. None of these are enough to make me want to change. It's always bad luck. It's always someone was picking on me. It's always someone else's fault.
And what are your parents doing at this point, or your family members doing at this point?
Yeah, so I have a really small family, and I feel like my grandmother was kind of isolated from it. The first time I got arrested, came in to save the day, got me the fancy lawyer, brought me to juvenile court, had my back, represented me, got a probation, and then it happened again, and then it happened again. And my grandmother was like, yeah, I'm not paying for lawyers anymore. And my father was like, don't know what to do. Like if it was up to my father, he probably would have slapped me around and kicked me out of the house because he just didn't know what to do. Old school Portuguese immigrant. But my mother was the one that just couldn't let go. She couldn't give up on me, and she had my back in one form or another. And they would like try to punish me, right? Oh, you're punished. Okay, what does that look like? Go to your room. Okay, I jumped out the window. Oh, we're taking your video game. Okay, I'll jump out the window and go play someone else's video game. Like, she never got to the point where like doing chins or getting the court involved or getting police involved. She did her best to try to redirect me and like even punish me, but I was not punishable.
Can you just explain what CHINS is real quick?
Yeah, I don't even know what it stands for, but like I forget what the actual acronym stands for, but CHINS is like a court order that adolescents sometimes will get, that it's ordered by the court to have a certain court curfew, or they're ordered to go to school, or they put certain rules and regulations on them that become punishable by potential adolescent like incarceration.
Okay.
So it's like usually it happens when teens keep getting in trouble and the parents are just like, I can't manage them, I don't know what to do. They'll put like a CHINS order on them. That could even be dated. It might not even be called that anymore, but that's basically what it is. You could call it an intervention through the legal system that gets puts these teens in a position where, if they continue down this road, they'll end up in like a juvenile
Is it like
detention.
a step before sectioning?
It has nothing to do with substances. Right, so it could be you never did a behavioral
thing. Okay,
you're getting arrested, you're lying, you're punching walls, you're stealing the car. You may also be smoking weed, but it's the behavioral stuff, often illegal behavior, and the parents don't.
Okay.
Yeah, and so a lot of parents are super reluctant because you don't ever want your kid to get a record, and you don't want to go down that road. But some of my friends were on CHINS. They were so out of control, and the parents were completely unable to manage them. So that could have been a thing, maybe, But so I go to New Bedford High, and I'm like a freshman there. Now I'm like, it was a blow to the ego because I was the man at Vogue, and I was established. And now I go to New Bedford High, I need a map. I don't even know where the hell I'm going. It's so big. It's like blue house, red house, green house. And I only had 4 classes because I had so many credits from being at Vogue. They were like, you got 3 classes a day and gym every other day. And it was like a joke. I was done by 12 o'clock every day. So what do? I go get a job delivering pizza because it's the perfect job for a drug dealer. So I'm 17 years old. I'm delivering pizza, and my friends will call me for weed. And I'm like, yeah, just call and get a small cheese pizza. I'll be there in 20 to 30 minutes.
Wow.
And it was chaos, By the time
these were all things that you came up with on your own, though.
Are you saying I was an innovative?
Yeah, I'm trying to not compliment you while at the same time pointing out the fact that you were pretty creative.
I find that a lot of people in recovery and a lot of people like me are actually really smart and really creative and really capable, and they find ways. So yeah, I've always been a kind of a smart kid, and they're like, oh, the kid's so smart, but he don't shut up. He don't stop disrupting the class. He don't try. So like when and I say we because I know thousands of people that are way smarter than me and doing better in life. And when we get well and actually put that energy towards good things, we can be also unstoppable and really successful because we're capable. But I never found it appealing to be a citizen, to be a graduate, to be a hard worker. I thought it was foolish. I thought the people that slept till 12 and woke up and made $1,000 that day had it figured out. And so that's the problem. I had good parents. I had good role models to choose from, but I thought they were lame. I thought you're out of touch. You don't know what's going on in the world. I don't want to be like you. I don't want to be the dad that's inconsistent. I don't want to be the mom that comes home bitching about Nancy in the office. Nancy. I was like, that's all ridiculous. I'm going to be those guys that make their own rules that everyone respects, that people are afraid of, that drive Cadillacs. And so like, I always had a job. I delivered pizza. I worked at Friendly's. I worked at Stop and Shop. I took an electrical apprentice job. I was doing roofing and vinyl siding at one point. I always had like a job because I thought it was important to, one, keep my parents off my back, to keep the police off my back and have like a little stable income. But I always did the side stuff so that I could party and be like the big shot and have the nice cars and the jewelry. And I did that for a long time. And you know, I'm not glamorizing it. It almost killed me. It was a joke, and it almost killed me. And a lot of my friends that did that with me are all dead. So like, I'm not trying to like make light of it, but the truth is I feel bad for the young kids that get on fentanyl so young because it's miserable immediately.
Right.
I had a lot of fun. And the parties, and it was a big joke. And that's why sometimes I understand it's hard to reach a teen, because if they're still having fun and the substance still serves a purpose, they look at you like, dude, get away from me. It'll never happen to me.
Right.
Well, let's fast forward, because it happened to me. The cool kid with the car and the jewelry and the job that everyone liked, and the party guy and the guy that got a guy, like next thing you know, OxyContin comes out. And just like every other pill and every other substance, I tried it, I liked it, I started selling it, and within a year I was fully blown addicted. And within a year of that, I was a heroin addict. It's not fun anymore. You're not cool. You don't got the pinky ring in the Cadillac. People are not calling you the party. Like within a year of sniffing heroin, I was shooting heroin. And that's at 22 years old.
Wow.
And from there, it's just miserable, you know, like 2 years of methadone clinic, 2 years of Suboxone, psych meds. You know, I've been in total, as a result of this lifestyle and these poor decisions that I made, I've been arrested over 12 times. I've been incarcerated. I turned 25 in the Dartmouth House of Correction in 2004. I've been shot at. I've been jumped twice. I've been stabbed in the back, literally punctured lung, hospitalized, almost died. And all the terror that comes with that, like losing the job, stealing from the mom, going to rehab, doing good for a little bit, thinking I can just smoke weed again. And then 6 months later, I'm doing heroin and I'm stealing from my mom again. And I'm devastating the family, and I'm overdrafting all my bank accounts, and I'm shoplifting for the drug dealer. Now it's not fun. It's not cute anymore.
Right.
Now I'm like running out of Walmart with carriages full of stuff or whatever I got to do just to go supply my habit, because I'm physically sick every day.
So were you able to maintain a certain lifestyle, keep a job, you know, go to school, what have you, up until you started using Oxy? Would you say Oxy was a defining moment for you?
It becomes unmanageable. So because the biology of building tolerance, I smoked a little bit on the weekend. I smoked more frequently. I drank and smoked weed heavily on the weekend. I smoke every day and drank heavily on the weekend. I smoke and drank a couple days a week and drank. Now I added, this is the progression from like 12 to 21. It's more and more and more frequent and stronger things. Not because I ever want to be a drug addict, because smoking a joint and drinking a Corona doesn't give me a buzz anymore.
Right.
Now I got to drink a half pint of Cool Blue 101 and smoke skunk. I need the stronger weed, right? And so that's all that happened. I always just wanted to be okay. I always just wanted to be able to breathe. I always just wanted to feel accepted. But when you start at a young age, self-medicating, you're stuck. You're in a rabbit race and rabbit hole. Because now I'm chasing the next. I'm always just trying to be okay.
You would think that lifestyle, though, would exacerbate those feelings of anxiety and feeling out of control.
No,
Did the lifestyle was kind of crazy, but the drugs brought the craziness into perspective, or even things out for you?
So I could have or should have died a couple different times before I even touched opiates. So fentanyl and heroin and OxyContin clearly kills people. And that, once I crossed that line at like 21, that could have killed me. But the way that I was living up until that was so reckless that I could have died in a car accident or in some kind of gang fight or even an overdose from mixing other pills and alcohol. And here's the thing. I got to this place where I didn't care. I wasn't suicidal, but I didn't care. I lived like this reckless, aggressive, I'll fight anyone, I don't care life. Like, bury me a handsome young man. I don't want to be old and feeble and senile. Like, I didn't care. I lived that way, like this reckless, you know, and a part of it was like the music I listened to too. You know, I got into all the mobster movies, and I was a big 90s, 2000s hip hop guy, and the hip hop scene was all about violence and sleeping around and selling drugs, and it glamorized it. And like, I wasn't afraid if I would have died in that life. You know, and then once I crossed the line to opiates, up until that point, I had never had a physical dependency.
Oh, interesting.
I drank and I smoked, and at any time I could have stopped and not been sick. There was never physical dependency. Mentally, I needed it, I wanted it, but I wouldn't withdraw without it.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying?
I get the distinction, yep.
So the difference is like when I start doing OxyContin and I go camping and I decide, all right, you got to pack for a camp trip, right? You get a couple 24 packs of Corona or get an ounce of weed, you get blunts and rolling papers, hot dogs and hamburgers, fishing gear. Like this is not normal, but that was the packing process at like 22. It's because my experience as a kid was my uncle. It was fishing and partying and eating and being loud. And so the first time I went camping, after I started using opiates, I didn't bring OxyContin because I didn't need, in my brain, I never needed anything. So it's like I had a couple left. The weed and the alcohol and the food were the primary thing for that weekend. Well, on day 2, it was like July. All of a sudden, I'm like clammy, cold sweats. Right? I think I got the flu. And one of my friends is like, yo, Kev, you're dope sick. I could have slapped him. You know what I'm saying? I'm Kevin Rosario. I make money. I sell drugs. You know, I'm not dope sick, nothing. And he's like, all right. Well, I was sick for another however long, and I gave in. He's like, dude, I'm telling you, if you sniff a little line of this, you'll be fine. And I sniffed a little line of an OxyContin, and in 20 minutes, I was fine. And that day changed my life forever because from that day forward, I know I need to have this or I'm going to be sick. And it goes deeper than that. I believe it goes to like the back of the brain where it's like fight or flight. And like part of your brain says, if I don't get this, I'm going to die. And now it's breakfast, lunch, dinner, funerals, weddings, camping trips. It does everything I did from that day forward was make sure you have enough to get through whatever, however long you're going to be.
And how were you financing this habit? You were still selling?
Yeah. In the beginning with the pills, it was manageable because I always had a job, I always sold weed, and I sold pills. So for a while, the pills were free. And then the habit starts to offset. Now, like I'm paying for the pills, but I'm getting them reduced. And then as things progress, next thing you know, like I'm spending all my profit on my own habit. And that's what actually set me up. Like, you know, I'm not joking when I say this, like I made a business decision to switch to heroin because I couldn't afford to do the OxyContin anymore. And then one day, one of my friends, who again, friends that started with the pills before me, he got to heroin before me. And he's like, Kev, you're spending $200 a day on a pill habit. He's like, if you sniff this $5 bag, it'll get you as high as that $50 pill. Wow. And I'm like, no way, that's heroin, that's dirty. I'm Kevin Rosario. It was like disgusting. The pills were socially acceptable. Everybody was doing them. The heroin was like faux, you know what I'm saying? But one day I buckled because I was sick and I only had X amount of money. And I got really high off a $5 line. And I was like, all right, like if I'm going to risk my life and sell drugs and live this life, I might as well at least like get a deal and like not spend all my money. So again, decision goes to heroin. Well, guess what? Biology says in 6 months, I'm doing $200 a day in heroin.
Wow.
Because I built the tolerance. And well, guess what? That friend, he's now shooting heroin.
Wow.
I'll never shoot heroin. I'll never shoot heroin. One day, I'm broken. I'm sick. Flu-like symptoms. My bones hurt. I'm not okay. I got like $20. And that guy says, if you shoot this $5 bag, you'll be fine. And I gave up one day. And he shot me with a $5 bag and I was wrecked. And I'm like, all right, here we go. So now I'm not sniffing heroin anymore. And in 6 months, I'm shooting $200 a day worth of heroin. You know what I'm saying? It just, from up until 2021, it was kind of reckless and dangerous and a lot of, you know, pitfalls, but it was fun. It was manageable. It wasn't, as soon as I switched into opiates, within a couple of years, my life was completely changed. It's not manageable. You can't be a recreational heroin addict. It's hard to hold down a job or be accountable or do anything. And then came like the desperate attempt of the next 9 years of like, well, how do I not die? How do I not be incarcerated? So from like 22 to 31, when I finally got into recovery, thank God, it was like the methadone clinics, the Suboxone, the psych meds. I moved to Tennessee. I went out to Georgia for a little bit, and I was just try to smoke weed, just drink alcohol, don't do the hard stuff, get on the right meds, and just chasing and desperate and like never really buying into recovery, never going to like therapy or 12-step groups or anything, just trying to figure out a way to manage it
on your own.
And I do okay for a little bit. Like, you know, you get the stuff out of my system. I'm still smart. I'm a hustler. I'll get the job. I'll get the car back. I'll get my stuff out of pawn. I'll wrap probation. Like, I'm able to bounce back on my feet quickly, but I can't keep it.
Right.
Because one, I have this mental obsession that keeps telling me, just smoke a little weed, just drink a little alcohol. You'll be okay. Don't do the hard stuff. And two, what we call a spiritual malady in my world, I have this emotional pain When you take drugs and alcohol away from someone like me, I'm not happy, joyous, and free, like saving orphans and doing blood drives. You know what I'm saying? I'm angry. You took away my best friend. You took away my best medicine. You took away all the things that made me feel okay, that suppressed the anger and the trauma and the insecurity. And I'm just like an unhinged, unprotected nerve when I'm abstinent. So I'm just riddled with anxiety, depression, fear, restless, irritable, discontent. And so I can only do that for so long before I just smoke a little weed, drink a little beer. And that was my cycle. You know, I'd do good for a little bit and I'd be in and out until this time when I finally like was broken enough to like take suggestions and go to real treatment and go to further treatment.
And how old were you at that point?
31.
Okay.
31.
What was it that prompted it at that point? Was there something that happened in your life?
Yep.
Or were you just sick of the cycle, sick of going on and off drugs, feeling good, feeling bad?
It's the question everybody asks. They really do. And I wish it was like this clear thing. But the truth is, I was collecting unemployment. I had a little shoplifting hustle going. My mom was letting me stay in her house. I had food. I had a safe place to sleep. They were feeding me. I'd work a few days a week here and there. Like on the outside, things were not like worse than they had ever been. On the inside, I didn't want to wake up anymore. You know, and it wasn't just this one thing. Like this is from 22 to 31, 9 years of mostly using with little periods of doing okay and giving the family false hope and blowing it all up again, that at 31, I just don't want to do it anymore. And then my best friend, this kid, Nick Winchenbeck, died. I grew up with him, not a using partner. I knew him since he was 7 years old. And like, he actually got sober and tried to like 12-step me. I'm in active addiction. And he calls my mother's phone, my cell phone's off. And he's like, yo, Kev, just for today, you know what I'm saying? Just for today. He's hit me with all this just for today language. I'm like, yo, bro, I appreciate you, but I got to go. I'm waiting for a phone call. I blew him off. Well, a couple months later, like he relapsed and died.
Wow.
And like, I would like to say that was the thing, right? I went to the funeral. I sat in the front row. His nieces and nephews call me Uncle Kev. I'm sitting there with his sisters. Like I'm that close. I'm strung out and I'm like sitting in the row with the families. And I'll never forget, he's in the casket. I go see him and I'm telling myself, oh, my mom's going to have a meltdown, right? Like I got to cry. I got to show emotion and get some sympathy out of the situation. And like, here come my mom and dad. They do the lap. They look at Nick. They take the turn. They look at me. Nothing. Because I'm devoid of feelings. I'm so numb emotionally that like I can't even fake a cry. And what happens is I go to the little service, I leave the service, and like this is how powerful addiction is. I know my best friend just died from doing opiates and benzos. I go home, I put his little eulogy on my bureau, and I put heroin with benzos, Xanax, crushed it together in a spoon, and I shot it into my arm. I said, rest in peace, bro.
Wow.
And I did that for another 3 months. This was May 2nd, 2010 that he passed. I didn't check into treatment until July 2nd, 2010. And it was like, I was just like, you know, that hit me for a second. And then it's like, boom, when you wake up in the morning, people say, oh, triggers, relapse prevention. And I work in treatment. And I know we'll get to that eventually, right? But like, there is something to that. Like if you're early on, it's helpful to be mindful. It's good to be aware of your triggers. It's good to change people, places, and things, and all those things that we teach, including where I work, right? But when you're gone, and you're full blown and you've been down this road for a decade, a trigger is waking up in the morning.
Right.
I don't need to see a spoon or money or like my, you know, some parent. No, I wake up and it's like, oh, we're getting high today. Mm-hmm. We'll go through the progression. Is there something I have that I can sell? Is there a way I can legitimately earn money? Can I steal from like a big store chain that doesn't affect anybody, or am I robbing someone I love? I'll go that way first. I don't want to rob anyone I love, but like it's going to happen.
Right.
You know, so that was like a trigger every day. And it was like you wake up and you're sick. And if you're not sick, you know you're going to be sick. And you're just in this crappy cycle of like getting my unemployment check on Tuesday, paying back the dealer, working a couple days, getting paid on Friday, paying back the dealer, getting a little bit more, broke by Sunday, cuffing something, paying on Tuesday, get the unemployment. I was like existing check to check.
On a hamster wheel.
And I was just so sick of it. I didn't want to kill myself, but I just wished I didn't wake up sometimes. I was so broken. And I should say, like, you know, in 2004, I went to detox a couple times. You know, before I went to jail, I went to detox. Like, I've had little limited exposure to these treatment center worlds, but I never took suggestions. I never went to further treatment. And so, like, it was before July 2nd. It was like the last week of June 28, 29, I started calling. No insurance, not even Mass Health. calling all the name places. Hey, I need a bed, don't go to bed. Hey, I need a bed. You call it, they say you call it 6 and 10, or you call it 10 and 6 or whatever. And I just kept calling twice a day. And I started like begging. Now I'm using my sales. I get this lady on the phone. I'm like, look, lady, I know it's going to be 4th of July weekend. I'm a really good addict. I'll be a good client. I'm clean. I'm not going to cause any problems, right? She's like, man, you should consider being a car salesman. You really, I'm like, lady, I'm currently laid off from a car dealership, okay? Like, that didn't work out for me. But she ended up telling me, if you've ever been on psych meds and you're off psych meds and abusing drugs and alcohol, you go to the hospital, to the crisis center. That's why I love the crisis teams, and I love the recovery coaches in the emergency room, because she told me they have to at least evaluate you by law. So I went to St. Luke's Hospital in New Bedford, and I said, I'm off my psych meds, because I've been given Prozac, Paxil and Zoloft and this and that. And I walked in and I says, hey, I'm off my psych meds and I'm abusing drugs and alcohol. I need help. And they brought me in, and just to context, you probably can't really tell, but like, I'm 6'1", 222 pounds right now. I was 167 pounds.
Wow.
That's like almost 60 pounds of mass off of me. And I was just skinny and emaciated. And like, you're in a bad way when you walk in a hospital and they bring you to another room and they immediately get you animal crackers and apple juice. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
To get this kid some sustenance. And I sat there for 10 hours, and the crisis team evaluated me, and they ultimately landed me a bed in a dual diagnosis unit. And one thing I'm grateful for, and I give a shout out to all the 12-step people and all the people that try to carry this message, because I remembered in 2004 what people said. They said, if you want any chance of staying in recovery, you got to pray in the morning and ask a power greater than yourself to remove the obsession. Try not to drink or get high for one day. Go to a meeting, join a meeting, get active, and then thank the higher power at night. And I just remembered, pray in the morning, pray at night, pray in the morning, pray at night. And day one in detox, I hated God, I hated religion, I hated the pedophile priests, I hated the pastor had a nicer car than my mom. Like, I had a lot of angst towards this idea of religion. But the people said, as long as it's not you and it's a power greater than you, you can pray to that. Thank God for that grace, because day one in detox, I got on my knees and I prayed to my best friend, Nick Winchenbach, that died. And I just spoke to him like I would speak to him, and I was like, yo, bro, I'm broken, dude. Help me. Help me not leave this detox. Help me not drink for one day. Like, please help me, bro. And I got through a day of detox, and I thanked him at night. And I did that every day for a week, and I begged for the bed at CSS, and I got the bed at CSS, and I'm still struggling. I don't even want to drink, but I'm angry now. And now there's other personalities here, and I want to fight people, and I want to leave with this pretty girl. And I was like, yo, Nick, please help me stay here. Please help me mind my business. Please help me stay on the path. And I just talked to Nick every day when I needed to, every morning, every night. And that got me through 3 weeks of treatment, 4 weeks of treatment, until I finally landed at a halfway house. And I was just going to meetings, and I knew like the next step was I'm going to need to get a sponsor. I'm going to need to get a home group. And I was scared, and I didn't want to do that. And luckily, this dude ended up 12-stepping me at a meeting. And he was like, hey, I see you sweeping and picking up the chairs. Like, if you want to know what we really do around here, I'd be willing to help you. And this was, I try not to say the names of fellowships because you're not supposed to at the press. But like, one of the fellowships focuses on one of the substances.
Right.
And I was like, I needed this in like high school, bro. Like, I need the other fellowship now. I'm way too far gone for this particular A, right? And he was like, listen, buddy, what are you willing to do to get into recovery? And I'm like, anything is the only answer. If that's not the answer, you're going to get dissed, right? And he was like, well, good, because the substance doesn't matter. The solution's the same. And if you're willing to take some action, I'll show you what someone showed me. And that changed my life. I met this guy every Saturday morning. He read the book to me. He broke down the powerlessness. He explained that I have a physical allergy and a mental obsession. It made so much sense because I never understood why I couldn't keep it in control. Why am I on methadone and I still want to get high? And this particular book says, when I put any substance into my body, it sets off this phenomenon of craving, this unexplainable craving to get more or use more. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if it's legal in the state of Massachusetts. It doesn't matter if they sell it in the store. You put a substance in me, now what I learned about neuroscience, that releases dopamine.
Yep.
My brain says, ooh, dopamine, we want more. Mm-hmm. So like for a guy like me, abstinence is the only option. But that's not enough, because when I'm not drinking or using, all I think about is drinking or using. And I got a brain that keeps convincing me it's going to be different, or it tells me we don't care if it's going to be different. We're going to do it. And I have this inability to pause and think it through. Oh, guess what that is? That's an underdeveloped prefrontal cortex. Mm-hmm. The front of the brain that's responsible for decision-making, impulse control, and risk assessment is not fully developed until the mid-20s. And if you start using substances before the mid-20s, you stunt the development of that part of the brain. Boom. Now all of a sudden, working in the field, the science science aligns with what this literature says. I had a brain that didn't have the ability to pause and think things through and to do risk evaluation. And even every time I tried to get sober, I still had this underdeveloped function of my brain. No pause, no risk assessment, no impulse control. And I'm like, wow, that's what I got. And the third thing that he taught me was what we just talked about, was like, without drugs and alcohol, I'm broken. I'm a broken little 7th grader with insecurity and self-esteem issues and no coping skills. And the 12-step process just changed my life. I wrote down everyone that ever hurt me, everything that ever upset me, everything I've ever been afraid of, any questionable part of my conduct, and I processed it and I read it to this guy, and it changed my life. I lost 90% of my anxiety, 90% of my anger. I walked out of there, and this was like a 6-month process or more, and I just walked out like high on life, like looking at the leaves, looking at sunsets. I was like this sappy, like they call it a spiritual awakening when you have the awareness that there's a higher power working in your life. And I had that big time, and it just lit my spirit on fire. And I just knew like I had to go out in the world, and this is why I've been saved. Like I've always been a salesman and a drug dealer and a playboy. And, they say, oh, you can talk a dog off a meat wagon, right? But I did that for self-gain, self-seeking. And so now, I am still a big mouth, and I do still have ego, and I do still like attention. And some of those things that annoy people actually have purposed me to go out there and be a megaphone for recovery and for prevention. And I'm not special. Like I'm grateful that I work in a place that like I can talk about it publicly, but I'm not special. Anyone that does what I do and did what I did will probably get the same results. I just get to be able to speak about it publicly, and I'm grateful for it.
You have many, many years of working in the field of addiction and recovery. You've worked for a bunch of different places: High Point Treatment Center, Gosnell Behavioral Health. You're now at New England Medical Group, and you're also the founder of ACES, which stands for Addiction Consulting and Education Services. So we've just talked about, you've just given us so much information about your personal journey. Can you share a little bit about your professional journey? How did you go from being in recovery and having this spiritual awakening that you just described to then applying that to the field of addiction and recovery?
So at first, I had no desire to work in the field. I thought maybe in the 12-step halls I could be of service and do commitments and be helpful there. But like, always been a sales guy and a business guy. So I assumed if I would just get the substances out of my system, I'm going to be like top level Fortune 500 sales executive type person. This is my vision, right? In my first year of recovery. Come home, start working for my father's painting company, hate painting. God bless him. Thank you, Dad, for always hiring me. I was a disaster. It was a lifelong amends. But next thing you know, a friend of mine, Corey P., shout out to him too. He actually texted me today because he saw me golfing in the snow yesterday with the frozen sand traps. He's like, bro, what are you doing? Can we go Wednesday? It's going to be 49. Yes, we can. And he was working at High Point, and they had this CSP program, community support provider, and basically like people with Mass Health would get a caseworker that would follow them after discharge and bring them to appointments for like 2 or 3 months, help them get as many services as possible, and then walk away. Just try to give them a leg up instead of just discharge, you're on your own. And they were like, hey, we're looking for someone like young and fired up in recovery with a reliable car. Like, you interested? And I'm like, dude, I'm making like $17 an hour right now. Like, what do they pay? He's like, $12 an hour, right? This is 2012. I'm like, I'll take the interview. So I go meet with the people, and I like the people, and I'm like, you know what, let's go. I took a major pay cut, and I had to drive from New Bedford to Brockton, which is 45 minutes, which is completely different of living in my parents' house and taking my father's company van to work every day. But I was like, I'll give it a shot. And next thing you know, like, I'm there for 2 years. I get promoted to like, lead CSP. And then a guy that was a case manager, Bill Abate, my guy, he was a counselor when I was in treatment. He was working at Brockton High Point when I was there. And then he went to Gosnell. And when he was at Gosnell, he became one of the first recovery coaches. They had a private pay program. It wasn't like now everybody's a recovery coach. There's certifications. It was a private pay program. And they were like, hey, Kev, we need a guy fired up in recovery, da-da-da-da. And like, so again, another friend put me into Gosnell. I get the interview. I get hired on the spot. I do that for like a year or so. And then I start doing like community outreach, setting up tables, going to speak in schools. And so this is a double, how did it happen? I was also in school. I went for my associate's degree in business management because I'm like, yeah, this recovery stuff's cool, but there's no money in it. I need to make money at some point in my life. That would, that's what I think I need to be happy. So I go get my associates, and then I'm starting to chip away at my bachelor's, and like the schools are like, hey, can you just come in and tell your story? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And Gosnold allowed me to do that, which I appreciate. And simultaneously, as like my career is growing more into the marketing business development side, there's been more and more demand to speak in schools. And like what I learned was while in school, public speaking 101 is like, who's your audience? First of all, what's your message? What are you trying to say? Who's your audience, and how do you change or tailor your message to reach that audience? I got a PowerPoint I can give to professionals, to parents, and to students, and I'm going to emphasize different things and say it in different ways to all those different people. All the same facts, right? And so I realized like, yeah, rah, rah, New Bedford, gun, stab, rah, rah. Dude, that's not everybody's story. And it's not relatable. I just had to think about 14-year-old Kevin Rosario, smoking a little weed, no big deal, having a good time. The dare guy comes in. You're like, shut up, dare guy. I'm going to go smoke weed after this immediately. You know what I'm saying? The cop guy comes in. Oh, look at all these drugs on the board. I'm like, oh, that's cool. What's that one? I haven't seen that yet, right? You couldn't scare me. You couldn't threaten me. And so I was like, I got to have a different approach. My story is not going to have an impact. So I've been fortunate to be around clinical and medical people, and I've gone to a lot of trainings and a lot of seminars, usually as the sales guy. But then while all the clients or the clinicians are in the group, instead of just sitting at my table on my phone, I'll go into some of them. And that's how I learned about neuroscience, and that's how I learned about the prefrontal cortex.
Interesting.
Right? So I had to pivot. I'm like, all right, if my frustration with my parents was, don't do it because I said so, then what's the opposite of that? Hey, dude, you're going to do whatever you're going to do. I'm not going to talk to you like a little kid, because I remember being 14 years old, this big. I thought I was a grown man.
Right.
I didn't like people talking down to me and threatening me and calling me a little kid. So when I go talk to kids, right, even if they're in high school, even if they're in middle school, I say, I look at you as all young adults. You're the future. You are young adults. I'm going to give you that respect if you give me the same respect while I'm speaking up here for an hour, right? So that's one thing. It's like, you got to try to defuse them. If they're on their guard and they think you're going to talk down to them and disrespect them, and you have the inability to scare them, no matter what you say, it's not going to land. So my first step is to try to let them know I do respect them, and I'll give them respect as long as they can act right. And two, I'm not going to scare you. I'm not going to threaten you. And I don't think that my story is everybody's outcome. I'm just going to give you information, and you can do whatever you want with it.
Right.
And you'll see, that's what I'll do. That's what I did last year. That's what I do all the time, because that's the most effective approach. And what I say is, like, even if you're smoking a little weed or vaping here and there and you believe it will never be anything more than this, you're not going to convince them otherwise, most likely. You probably know someone who actually has a drug problem. You might have an uncle or a brother or a sister. Maybe this information you can use to help them. So again, diffuse them, because I want them to actually listen. And threatening and attacking and condescending, they're not going to open up.
Right.
And then so the approach becomes, here's the science. Here's what I learned. Here's what I learned about the brain and dopamine. Who's most at risk? I don't know. Does it run in your family? Genetic predisposition's a real thing. Have you ever heard of that? And like, try to give them practical reasons why they should at least consider. And my goal is not never drink a beer the rest of your life. That's ridiculous, right? Prolong first-time use. If I can take you from the summer of when you were 14 smoking that first joint to 17, we've at least decreased the risk a little bit.
Right.
You know, and shout out to Dr. Joe Schran, because I learned that from him, and he basically said the data on the science shows that if you wait until you're 16 before you try your first substance, including nicotine, which is heavy nicotine in these vapes, then you're like 26% less likely to become addicted.
Right.
If you wait till 18, it's like 32. 21, it's like 47. 25, it goes to like 67% less likely. That's a huge number.
Right.
And it's the correlation between the fully developed brain.
Exactly.
And so that my whole approach changed. And then like next thing you know, like schools were like, hey, how much do you charge for this presentation? I'm like, charge? Like, I love doing it, and Gosnold lets me do it. And they're like, yeah, no, but we have a budget and we have to spend the money. Oh, we don't get more money next year. I'm like, well, what do you think's reasonable? They're like, would you do it for $2,500? I was like, absolutely. Of course I will. What do you need, an invoice? Yeah, you need a W-9. Okay, no problem, right? And so next thing you know, like I'm talking to the CEO, and he's like, hey, Kev, and now also I have a couple kids, I get engaged, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't work out. Next thing you know, I'm a single dad with child support, and, you know, life is happening. And they're like, hey, look, not for nothing, next time you get and this is the funny thing. Even when they first started doing that, I said, well, I work for a nonprofit, so just send it to them. They were sending all the checks to Gosnold. And then eventually the CEO was like, hey, look, I know your life changed a lot. Next time you get a paid gig, why don't you keep the money?
Nice.
I was like, say less. Within literally 2 weeks, I had an LLC, a Facebook page, an email address, like the whole shebang.
So that's how ACES started.
Formed.
Okay.
But it's a transition to New England Medical Group as well. So now I'm being more public. I'm getting like cool people to do some video content so I can share on some platforms. And then a good friend of mine, Justin Campbell, who used to work with me at Gosnold, he goes with this other group and they start New England Medical Group right here in Hingham. And they started as an adult mental health program first. So it might have been SUD first, actually. And then they realized that there was a mental health need. So then they got the mental health license and they were growing, and they opened an adolescent mental health day program in Milford, and they had eyes on doing another one in Hingham. And so Justin and the owners, who I'm cool with the other owners, they see me on social media and I'm spending a lot of time speaking in high schools, and they're like, yo, Kev, come join us, help us. Like, look what we're doing. We're doing this cool work with the kids. We're doing animal-assisted therapy. Like, do your thing, but do it on the South Shore, you know? Like, come up this way. And it was like a win-win. It was like, for them, it was like, one, you got, not to sound arrogant, but like, you got a seasoned guy who's been in the field for 12 years who also has a strong heart and lens for prevention, and they're opening an adolescent program. So they were like, look, go out into the world, do all this, and like, you know, if kids need help, we can actually help them. And I was like, oh, that's great, because I learned a lot at Gosnold, but they didn't really have adolescent services. So I'd go into like Plymouth or Falmouth or wherever, and they'd be like, someone would come up to me and actually want help. And then I would be scrambling to try to find somewhere to refer them. So it was like a good win-win for both of us. Like, I joined them a little over a year ago, January of last year, and I took on the role of Senior Director of Community Engagement to hold true to like what I want to do in the community. I want to do prevention. I want to do education. I'm very involved in a family support group that we started that is the second Tuesday of every month, led by Maureen Kavanaugh's like just like a 26-week learning module. It's awesome. Christine Hill facilitates. I oversee the alumni person, so we're doing alumni initiatives. And then I also, because I've been doing this for a while, like, I know some people, so I manage some of the union business and the EAPs, and I work with some hospitals, and like, I'm kind of like the guy now. I'm one of the guys. I'm not like better than anyone, but like, if you know me, I'm going to be able to connect you with services. It's not always New England Medical Group, right? We got PHP and IOP in Milford, Brookline, Norwell, Hingham. We have 6 locations, 4 adult and 2 adolescent, but that's not always what people need. But like, I've been doing this for so long that I know the services, I know the resources. And so, and then if I don't, I call Justin. Justin knows. If Justin don't know, we tap someone else. And like, it's just been a really cool journey.
I think it's interesting because you keep referring to yourself as the guy still. So it's like that little kid who wanted to be the guy, who had the uncle that was the guy. Now you're the guy, but you're the healthy guy.
The healthy guy.
You're the guy that's helping others
That's right.
and living a healthy lifestyle. So that's really incredible. So how can people find out more about ACES and New England Medical Group?
Yeah, I mean, you can find us online, newenglandmedicalgroup.com. The cheat code is NEMGP.com because it's actually New England Medical Group Partners. So NEMGP.com. And mine, ACES, is addiction-education.com. And again, yeah, the guy is less about ego and look at what I have. It's more about like, I'm a resource. I'm the guy that if I don't have it, I know who does. And anyone can call me, email me. My phone number is 774-406-6765. If you go to my ACES website, you'll see my email address there. Totally accessible, you know, and I feel like it's the best of both worlds because in my 12-step world, which I still do, like after this today, I go pick up a new guy at a halfway house. I'm going to bring him to a meeting. I'm not going to take pictures of it. I shouldn't even be talking about it now. But like I have a 12-step world where I'm of service altruistically. And like, because I got my start in nonprofit and because I learned about service and early recovery, I think even in my professional world, it's like, I was taught good ethics and to do the right thing. And like, even if you can't treat someone or even if you don't take their insurance or even if you're not a good fit, the right thing to do is not to dump them. It's to take the time to put the hand in someone else's hand. If you're not the person that can't help them, at least give them another lead. And that's what the people I associate myself with do. You got to do the right thing. If you're not the person, connect them with someone that might be.
So you've had some pretty incredible experiences in your life, and you must draw upon those when you're working with young people. What are some tips that you give to young people on how to make safe and healthy choices around substances?
Obviously, I try to encourage people not to, along all the stuff we've talked about, and not just say don't do it because I said so, but like, here's the science, like strongly consider, not doing it yet. And I even say sometimes in my presentations, like, I don't want you to think I'm the anti-alcohol or weed guy. I'm not. Like, go to school, get a master's degree. Call me when you're 25. I'll buy you a glass of champagne to celebrate, because your brain can literally handle it at 25. Just to try to not be like the overbearing dad, I throw them that. I say, that being said, it's dangerous right now. And what's really dangerous is like how much stuff is laced with fentanyl. You're finding like Xanax, Klonopin, Adderall, Percocet. The police are confiscating them and finding that they have traces of fentanyl. If not, they're completely fentanyl. So it's like, when you talk about making good decisions, like, well, one, you shouldn't. But if you're going to, don't buy off random people. And you should probably always be with someone. You know, don't drink. But if you're going to drink, don't drive, right? So it's like those tough conversations, like, I 1000% don't think you should, and you never have to. I've been sober for over 14 years. I have a great life. I laugh, I dance, I travel, I go to weddings. It's not necessary. But the reality is like, we'd be naive to think that they're not going to experiment. So it's like, at least try to give them some of the sense, like, hey, have someone you can call if you feel compromised, whether it's from alcohol or substances. If you're, smoking weed or drinking, don't drive. Have someone else that you can, almost like a buddy system, especially the girls. The girls are the scariest. I have little daughters that I want to protect with my life. And once they become teens and they're out in the world, like, that's scary. Like, women are preyed on. You got to be careful as a young woman. Like, you could get drugged, and the roofies have made like a new appearance. Girls are getting roofied again. It's like, roofies, I haven't heard of roofies in 30 years. That was like an old 80s date rape drug, and that's coming back. So, I mean, the short version is, don't do it. You shouldn't do it. But if you're going to do it, like, at least know what you're taking and have someone with you, and don't drive drunk, and maybe get honest with your family members about it. So, and then the last thing I'll say on that is like, but why? Why in the first place? And like, I'll give Chris Herron a shout out on that too, because his more recent video that I watched was more about the first day. I love that one. I was like, oh, this one's really good. He had a lot of content that I'm like, oh, I can use that, because it's like less about, oh, you're doing drugs and alcohol bad. It's more about like, how were you feeling on that day that you thought that was a good idea?
Right.
That's the real problem. Real prevention work is not about scaring people into not doing drugs. Just like real recovery is not about don't drink one day at a time. Real recovery is about what's bothering you in the first place, and how can we help you heal?
Right.
How can we help you find peace and happiness and purpose? Because happy, healthy, grateful people don't need drugs and alcohol. So real prevention is not like scare them about drugs, cut them off, put vape smoke detectors. You got to do all those things, don't get me wrong, but it's not the solution. The solution is, how do we get in front of it? How do we help young people find healthy coping skills, process trauma, learn ways to say no and avert risky behavior? How do we help them heal? A lot of these young people that look like little kids, they got a lot of pain going on inside of them, whether we know it or not. And so real prevention work is about, yes, here's your education, here's information, make good decisions. But more importantly, this is a call to action. If you have anxiety, if you have trauma, if you have insecurity or low self-esteem, please let someone know so we can help you. Because if we can get that, then they're less likely to use drugs and alcohol.
So that's, again, another nice segue into my next question. So you are a dad of two adorable little girls. I'm friends with you on Facebook. I see them all the time. So effective parenting has to be at the forefront of your mind. And you just talked about, making sure that kids know that they have someone that they can communicate with, someone they can reach out to. What role do you see parents playing in that process? How can parents effectively convey that information to their children?
So I don't want to be harsh, but I think the parents are the problem a lot of the times. It's probably not popular. You can cut it out if you want. But like, the truth is, I'll get back to my parenting thing, but what I find is a lot of parents right now, we live in a tough times. People are super sensitive. People are afraid to hurt feelings. And sometimes parents are a little more concerned with the relationship and the status quo than being the parent. I think a parent has to sometimes be a parent. And that means you're not popular and they're going to be upset with you and they might not talk to you. But if that's what it takes to say, listen, I love you, but you can't vape in my house. You can't smoke weed. I have to create consequences and boundaries. Like when we do coaching and we get young people in treatment sometimes it's like, all right, the kid's actually doing good. Like, how can we help you? How can we give you better? And it's not their fault. They're not bad people. Right. They're just doing the best they can.
Right.
But what I identify is like, they're like, oh, it's little Billy, he's 16. I can't make him do anything. And I look back and I'm like, oh, does he have his own job? Does he pay for his cell phone? Does he pay for his own car? And does he have his own house? No. Oh, then you have a lot of power. You have so much power. Do you know how powerful the Wi-Fi code is? It's so powerful. You know what I'm saying? And so to try to encourage parents to say, hey, look, I know it's hard, especially hard if you're like single parent and you're just trying to make up for that. Like, it's hard. I'm not saying it's easy. It's hard. But one suggestion I have for parents is like, be a parent, get professional help, get guidance, help learn how to create boundaries, because my experience is as long as it's comfortable and easy, you're not motivating any change. The other side is the preventative parenting. So if you're in a place where I'm at, and what I know from hearing thousands of people speak at meetings is this: my name's Kevin, I'm an alcoholic, and when I was like 12 or 13 years old or 14, I had major insecurity and I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin. And like, I didn't trust people. I didn't think people, this is so common, 12, 13, 14, you hear a lot of people. Some people start later in life, but that's the sweet spot. And it starts with a feeling of not feeling good. And so they sought relief. So again, prevention work, and with my own kids, is how do I love my kids and build resiliency and help them have positive self-esteem so that they're not so easily influenced by other people. Side note to that is beautiful, loving parents who did that their whole life still have kids that experiment.
Right.
But this is what I do. My kids will be running amok. Sometimes they're sweet. Sometimes they're terrorists. They're 4 and 5 years old. Sometimes they care less about my day. They don't care what I have to do. They don't care that I have an appointment and I have to get them to daycare. Sometimes they're tough. I would say 9 out of 10 days, because sometimes I'm tired. 9 out of 10 days, no matter what happened all day, before I put them in a bed, I squeeze them and I hold them individually and I say, Kai, you did such a great job today. Daddy loves you so much. You're so smart. You're so strong. You're such a good sister. You did a good job sharing today. And I try to press love into them before I put them to bed, because I don't ever want them to go to bed thinking daddy's mad or daddy doesn't love them or they can't talk to daddy. And that's all I can do now. All I can do is try to press love into them. They have a good mother that presses love into them. We're not together, but that's an adverse childhood experience. I've learned a lot from smart people, and they say kids from separated homes are at an increased risk. So what's the solution? Be available, be consistent, never flake, don't get angry, don't be judgmental. Let them know that you're there for them. Encourage them. I tell them, look, daddy's always here. Daddy's going to be here for you. I'm going to protect you forever, for the rest of your life. If there's something you need to talk to me about it, talk to me. Like, I got your back. I won't be mad. And I just have to keep saying that. And
that's age appropriate too. So you're
language changes.
You're choosing certain things at certain levels, depending on what their cognitive ability is.
As they get older, if you're dealing with like teens or preteens, I really believe we need to like take the gloves off. Like, I will not be shy with my kids that both of their parents are people in long-term recovery. You are at the highest risk factor. Right? You come from 2 parents with an addiction history. You come from a separated home, even though we're generally pretty healthy and we, parent well. So that's why I just got to support what's happening on my couple days, because she has 60-40. So I have them 2 days one week, 3 days the next week. And so my role there is be the best dad, be the most present, be consistent. Don't let them get over on me. And because I want to be the best dad ever. What that looks like is sleep all day, get up all night, eat candy, watch video. No.
Right.
I'm risking them being upset with me sometimes by being consistent. And if they act up, there's a timeout chair, and trying to be consistent with what I say and what she says, So, and as they get older, it's going to be like, don't do drugs because I said so. Don't do drugs because addiction runs in both sides of your family. And talk about like, if you have anxiety or low self-esteem or whatever you are feeling that you feel you need relief from, let daddy help you.
Right.
There are resources that kids can find, even if mom and dad's not the approachable person, but I want to always say, make it non-punitive. Look, even if you're drinking, even if you're smoking, even if you get in trouble, we have to do something. But I love you, and I'm not mad at you, and I can't imagine what you're going through, and I will do whatever I can do to help find the resources to help you feel better.
So, Kevin, I want to thank you for being here with us today for this important conversation. Thank you for your vulnerability and your openness, and for all the work that you do.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
This has been Substance Free 02043, brought to you by Hingham Cares. I'm Kristen Root, and I hope that you will tune in again. For more info or to get involved, go to hinghamcares.org.